Hey, Feisties. What's holding you back from lifting heavier? Chances are it's not your body. It may be outdated myths that have kept women away from strength training for decades. Okay, check that, centuries. If you're like me, strength training was not a part of regular programming for you and other female athletes in high school. That leads to big ripples that affect how we show up in the gym and whether we even strength train to begin with. Here's the truth. Strength training injuries are far less common than running injuries, and that perfect form that a lot of us are chasing, it may not even exist because every body is different. If we want strong bone health, muscular health, frankly, everything health, we need to consider how lifting fits into our health and performance routine. Like, really need to consider it. So today, we're dismantling the barriers that keep women from claiming their strength with Cassi Niemann, strength coach and co-owner of Iron Soul Gym in Albuquerque. Cassie's journey from elite gymnast to architect to barbell coach gives her a really cool perspective on how women can build sustainable strength practices. As someone who competed at age 6, Cassie understands the pressure of perfectionism and how to let go of it. In this conversation, you'll discover why heavy is a feeling, it's not a number, how your body naturally finds efficient movement patterns that work for you, why community might be the secret ingredient to consistent training, and how understanding how the pelvic floor can transform our relationship with strength. So whether you're intimidated by the weight room or looking to redefine your training approach, this conversation will help you leave perfectionism behind and embrace the strength that's already within you with the barbell. Welcome, welcome. We're excited to have you here, and thanks for joining us, Cassie.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're just going to jump in. You have a really cool background. I was reading up on you and I was like, okay, she's been through some really cool things. So elite gymnast to rower, architect, strength coach, pretty cool. And you've talked about how well those roles have complemented each other. You've also experienced strength training through a lot of different phases in life. So I guess my question for you is, how have all of these experiences shaped your understanding of strength and your relationship with strength training?
Yeah, it's, we show up in like so many different ways over our lives. It's just like a constant evolving thing. And I think especially as women, like we go through these massive like body changes. Not everyone, and lots of people of all genders go through lots of different body changes over the course of their life. But it's like a little more standard, I guess, if you're having a baby or whatever. But I think that like each part of that has showed me like the key is really being consistent and like finding your connection back to movement. But as a coach, I had to have some like talks with myself over time of like, I come to fitness and movement in a very different way than a lot of other people. I've like, since I was 2, I've been doing something really active with my body. And by the time I was 6, I was competing. So for me, competition is just this extension of moving my body. And for a lot of people, that is not at all who they are.
Right.
So I just, I think the biggest things that kind of like shape how I look at it, it's probably chosen, right? You said I was an architect. I went to school for a very long time to do that. And I worked as a licensed architect for a long time. So I think it's almost like self-preservation to be like, they're all connected, because otherwise it's like, what am I doing with my life?
Totally.
But I do think that, we find ways to make things feel worth it. And like, maybe I was seeking ways to build spaces to find comfort and community and accessibility and the sense of belonging. And I think strength in some ways is very similar. Like I'm always striving to create community around training and like almost a sense of belonging inside your own body, which is a little more out there, but I think it's ultimately about like building these spaces where you can feel comfortable to explore and build and change, because we kind of have to,
Right.
in order to survive.
Mhm.
So maybe there is a bunch of overlap there. I don't know.
Right?
I just tell myself there is.
Right. Absolutely. Like completely intentional. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing I think that I found so interesting is, having worked with gymnasts, it's all about perfection. The better, like the cleaner and the more perfect the program, the better you're going to perform. And then rowers, it's all about the numbers. So I could also see how that could be tricky getting behind the barbell and then thinking about adaptability and not focusing on just the number. So when you think about strength, like what are the things that you're looking for, either for yourself or clients, that go beyond the weight on the bar?
Well, what I've been able to learn and evolve from like my upbringing is that like pushing through pain isn't what is rewarding, right?
Yes.
Like this kind of like, no matter what, you do the thing. And I think gymnastics was very much in that way for me, in the way that I was kind of, I raised myself inside that sport. I think just as a whole, that's the kind of culture that it provides. But I think, and then in rowing, it's a team sport, so everybody's relying on somebody else and you're all expected to show up and do the thing. And even there's weight classes and like being smaller gets you faster against the smaller people and things like that. So this idea that like, it doesn't have to be the worst thing ever to be good for you.
Right.
And pain is really just like information, not like a testament of your worth.
Yeah.
And like smaller and leaner isn't always better, right?
Totally.
It doesn't even automatically like make you healthier or stronger in any way. So I think that like those are the big things and the ways that I, look at this differently.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like all those experiences have, I don't want to say forced, but encouraged or invited you to look at things from a different perspective and to revisit your relationship. Yeah. What do you think?
I was going to say, there's just not like one right type of athlete, know, and gymnastics is most certainly like you should look this way. And of course I was a gymnast a long time ago.
Yeah.
Many years ago now. And I feel like it has been some evolution in all of that, but I do think it's still rooted in one kind of appearance. And then even rowing, like I'm 5'3¼ Thank you very much. So I'm not very
quarter's
tall.
Important.
Yeah.
Yes.
But even then, like I wasn't even the right type of rower, I was like too short. But somehow I made it work. And I feel like all those things kind of led me to this place that I am now, where it's just not as structured and regimented. It's much more, we got to do what we want to do and we'll meet ourselves where we are.
Right. Yep. Yeah. That makes sense. What have you learned, or I guess, let's say, what have you had to unlearn? Especially when it comes to, like, I think about, gymnastics. I'm blanking on her name. You'll know it. Finishing the vault or the horse on the broken ankle at the Olympics, and how that was
shrug.
Yeah. Like coming from that culture of like push through broken bones and do anything for your country. And like, it's like, what's the line? But that's what we were socialized is, sacrifice your health and wellness in order for the performance. Right. Folks can argue whether or not it was worth it in that moment, given the zeitgeist and this and that and the Olympics. That said, we've had to learn, unfortunately, we've learned a lot of and internalized a lot of things about what it means to be a woman or a female athlete who's really committed or devoted or this or that. So if you think about the things that you learned unintentionally as a gymnast, as a rower, what have you like thrown out and been willing to unlearn? And then how's it different now?
I think like one would be like this idea that there's always going to be a time where you do push, right? Like Carrie Strug was in the Olympics and it was, for the win, and it, it was a moment. but we are not Carrie Struck
Right.
in the gym.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not any of those Olympians except for the Olympians, and they're on their own journey.
Yep.
And so it's this idea that perhaps we don't need to be so intense, but I think it's also like we also don't need protection from that intensity, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yes. Yeah.
and I think that's ultimately where we're going to end up in this conversation, right? Is like, what's heavy? How do we train in a way that's heavy? And like, how do we do the thing and tear down the barriers that keep us from doing it, right?
100%.
And so it's this idea of like, we are not supposed to be that intense all the time, but we do need some.
But we can
intensity.
be. Yep.
And it's all relative. It's relative to ourselves, right? But I think ultimately, like, we don't need protection from that intensity. We just need like opportunity and support to get there. And a lot of times it might seem like that intensity that was given in those moments doesn't feel as supported or like protected or, obviously we learned tons of things about Carrie Strug and Bella Caroli after those Olympics. And that's just one example. That was a long time ago. And there's tons of gymnasts that will talk in different ways, but, and I'm sure every sport has their, their things. Yeah. But I do think that like this is something I'm actually working on very personally in my own therapy journey, which is like my worth is not tied to perfection and being judged. Right. And I think we go into a lot of things with this idea of like, I need to do it well. I need to do it right. And if I don't do it that way, what's the point? And so I think that becomes this barrier. And so I've had to kind of, and I am very much still working on it, kind of pull myself away from this idea that it doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah. And when I think actually like down the line, again, later in this conversation, probably when I think about strength training, most people, they're afraid to start. They're afraid to do it because they're afraid they're going to get hurt. Because they think it needs to be done perfectly. Like that form is the end all be all. And in the end, it's actually not. Like the data doesn't actually really support that. It's more typically like you are doing a load or an intensity for which you are not yet prepared for.
That makes sense.
And because I think this is the other thing is that I've kind of like learned or unlearned is that like we are extremely resilient as human beings. Like our bodies are capable of doing all kinds of weird things in weird ways. I mean, you go into the gym and if you stood there for an hour, which, I own a gym, I basically am there all day. Yeah. I'm going to see so many different types of squats. Yeah. And some of them I'd be like, cool, yeah. And then some I'd be like, whoa.
And then also like I've learned like different size or length femurs or torsos and like how that's going to affect the, the lift and all of that.
Exactly. Right. Like what I might see might be what I think is most efficient for someone, but their body's going to orient itself under the bar and like do the task at hand, right? And so my point is like, you're going to do things, everybody's going to do things in their own way, and your body will adapt as long as you're doing it in like a way that is creating the ability to add more load, right? And so most of the time the injuries are happening because too much load, too fast, too much volume, right? You're just not prepared for the task at hand.
That makes sense.
And it's not form. As much. There are ways to make things more efficient and certainly, to make things feel better, but they also look different for everyone. So I guess there's this idea of like, it's got to be perfect.
Right.
Right.
I'm going to get injured. I'm going to throw out my back. I'm going to do something, which you think about it, like, running, cycling, the injuries in general are not due to form. It's due to increasing volume and or intensity too quickly, and your body hasn't adapted. That totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. And it's applicable to like any sort of movement pattern. And even when you look at like something like running or intramural soccer, the injury rates, per, 1,000 hours or however they calculate it, they're actually so much lower under a barbell.
Interesting. Okay.
Like dramatically.
Yeah.
And yet if, if you were to just go tell your friends like, oh, I signed up for a 5K on Saturday and like you haven't been running, they'd be like, cool, awesome. Where are we getting brunch? Right. And then like, but if you were like, I'm going to like do my like, max deadlifts, they'd be like, oh my gosh, don't hurt your back.
Be careful.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's like this cultural idea of like what strong is. I'm going off at a tangent.
And like what women and female athletes can handle and what we can't. Right.
Yes.
Like those assumptions that that totally makes sense.
So it's just like this idea that you really have to be perfect in order to do it.
Yeah.
And one, you're never going to be, because you have to start somewhere. And two, that doesn't even matter anyways.
Yep.
It's really just about creating like repeatable, efficient movements that work for you.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I was working on. Yeah. Yes. We make the rules. Okay. It reminds me of, I was working on squat depth for a while and one of the trainers came up behind me and I was like, oh gosh, I'm doing it wrong. Right. Like automatically I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get feedback. That means I'm doing something wrong. And that perfectionist in me, when it's like, no, they're working with you. And he gave me some really small, I think they were like 1 pound or maybe even like half a pound plates and just tucked them underneath my heel. And that did something to help with the angle and the squat depth and this. And I was like, oh my gosh, that feels so much better. And they're like, right? Like, it's not about the right thing. It's about finding the right environment and creating the circumstances that work for you. And it might change because our bodies change and that's okay. Right. So yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
And they're going to do something different every time.
Right.
Right. Like we often think it needs to be this exact movement every single time. Right. Like it needs to be like, we're just these robotic beings that are just like doing the same thing. But like our body is so complex that like, one thing's going to fire and then another thing. And then the next time you do it, it'll be like this one, then this one. And so it's just about kind of controlling the variables that you can and being prepared for, whatever way your body wants to go and then having lots of options.
Yep.
And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, it's funny that I just pulled in like my own personal therapy into this whole thing, which is, again, it makes me feel really good about my journey.
We're all on myself included. Right? Like we're all on the journey. I often say, as a sports psychologist to my clients, I'm like, it's not even about the lifting. Like the lifting is the vehicle for doing the work. Like you are learning about yourself every time you can't hit a certain weight or you feel some type of way. Like that's actually the workout is dealing with those inner turmoils and navigate that. And then asking yourself, can I still show up? Yep. Sure can. Right. But yeah. So then one thing that I'm really curious about, because, I'm sure you've heard, a lot of, I'd say the former myth, I think we've gotten around it at this point is like, don't bulk up. What do you think? I think people are finally recognizing like, yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not a thing. But what are the things that you're hearing nowadays or the myths, the misconceptions, especially for women in strength training?
I do think that I've actually evolved a little bit in my own response. Like if someone came to me and said like, oh, I just don't want to get too bulky.
Right.
I would be like offended. I'd be like me or like
who wouldn't
really hard.
Tree trunks like I do. Yes.
but I've learned that like, that isn't one, like a very empathetic response to somebody's concern.
Fair.
And like their barrier. And there are people that gain muscle a lot faster than me. I hate them.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But I do think that like the most important thing we can do is kind of like address those concerns. Like, where's that coming from?
Yeah.
What is bulky to you? Like what do you see your body as what would feel strong? And, so I don't necessarily like push back on that anymore. I used to in the past. It's not worth my like pushing back on it because why would I want to change this core belief they have? And instead I just try and like shift that conversation from like appearance to like capacity. And I think, I am a barbell coach. I love barbells. And that's because I enjoy them. I think they're really efficient. I think they get the job done. But they also have this capacity to make you feel super empowered.
Yeah.
And so what when someone does come to me with those kind of like perhaps antiquated ideas like diet culture or whatever it is, I want to be smaller, I want to be more toned, I don't want to get big and bulky, I don't want to eat protein all day. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
If we're still going to strength train, like whatever it is you want your body to look like. But when you go under the barbell, even like the first time, it's like, oh crap, I'm strong.
Yeah.
Like just doing the one set of squats or whatever it is. And I find that to be a big like pivot moment for people. And sometimes it takes getting started to then shift how you change it. And so a lot of times, instead of trying to combat those kind of stereotypical beliefs when they come in, it's just like, well, let's just get started.
Right.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And I think like we just need to like normalize body changes, right? And like I said, like everybody's body kind of changes at different points in their lives.
Yep.
And so just kind of saying, okay, this is your new body. How are we going to work with it?
Yeah.
And most of the time, their idea of what they want and how they got there evolves. And it's exciting to watch. I mean, I almost always someone will come in and or I'll talk to them on a call and they'll be like, I just want to feel strong. I just want to be able to like, play with my kids, play with my grandkids, like pick up my 5 cats, whatever it is. Like their idea of strong is just longevity, health, life, right? And they're like, I don't care about the numbers. Like, I don't want to lift really heavy. I just want to get strong. And I'm like, great. Okay, cool. Let's get started. And then like give them about like 3 to 5 weeks and they're losing their stuff when they can't add 5 pounds to the bar. Like their worth is all of a sudden immediately connected to the weight that they want to lift. And I have to like rein them in and pull them off the edge of the cliff and be like, remember why you're here. But that's because it's kind of like this addictive, fun thing. But again, it shifted. So the way that they see what they're capable of has shifted from like, I just want to feel, strong to like, I want to lift all the way.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of times it's a matter of like creating access, creating opportunity, being open to whatever it is someone's coming in with.
Yep.
Right. And then just showing them the ropes and seeing what happens. And sometimes people change. Sometimes they're like, yeah, no, I don't want to do more weight. Okay. Well, then we figure out another path.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Anyways.
I think our why often changes. I think it's so refreshing to just normalize that. Yeah. Right. It's like, and there's no one right why. Like, it's not that, you can't come and lift heavy because I don't want this to be your goal. Like, no, you do you. You want to come lift? Cool. That makes sense. Yeah. What are some of the things, because you're specialized in several areas that are specific to women, including pregnancy and postpartum. What are some of the specific physiological considerations that people may be overlooking or not taking into account when it comes to women's strength training? Like, what comes to mind?
Oh, your pelvic floor.
Yeah. Yes.
And not even like specifically, I mean, yes, specifically the pelvic floor. I just think like, I remember I went to a pelvic floor physical therapist early on in my strength training because I was having stress incontinence from like lifting heavy. Yeah. And I had never had any kids. I, never had any issues. And I went and I like got an exam and like my mind was like blown. I was like, I know nothing about how this muscle in my body works. And I'm like supposed to know about muscles.
Right.
And so that was, to me, was really eye-opening. And then eventually I did go through a pregnancy. And I think having had that experience, like allowed me to go into it with a little more knowledge. But I think my relationship now with the pelvic floor PTs that I'm kind of engaged with or OTs, we talk mostly about breathing. Like that is mostly what we talk about. And the system of the pelvic floor is working with the diaphragm.
Yep.
And ultimately when we are asking our body to lift relatively heavier weights, right? Which is ultimately the realm that I live in. We have to incorporate our breath to create this internal pressure, right? And if we don't, then we kind of leave things like slightly more vulnerable. So it's the breathing in the pelvic floor, I think is just like a really important part of strength training. And it's ultimately very important for anyone who has any sort of prolapse symptoms or any kind of trauma that, and I mean that not like in a trauma, but like any sort
trauma.
Like things that have happened to their bodies. And I think that keeps some women away. And I think that some knowledge in those departments can just kind of calm the fears because it's strength training. The data doesn't say that strength training creates any sort of pelvic floor issues. What it does typically is it allows them to appear, which basically means they were probably there. Right. And when we load the system, it's going to find
those vulnerabilities show.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
So a lot of times people will think, well, how do I protect my pelvic floor when I'm strength training? Well, the answer is like, you should strength train and then we see what comes up. So I think having that knowledge is really helpful. And so what I try to do is learn as much as I can, but I also try to like team up with people that know way more than me.
Like pelvic floor PTs, which we'll definitely be getting on the podcast and talking more about that. For folks who have maybe not even heard of pelvic floor or they've heard of it, but they're like, I don't know what that means. Could you do like a really quick crash course on like, what are signs that someone might want to work on their pelvic floor or strengthen it?
I mean, pelvic floor function can like, if it's not functioning in the way it should be, it can show up in all kinds of ways, like hip pain, back pain, like certainly like incontinence or like issues with any intercourse or anything like that. Like obviously those are more clear. But I just think it's a fascinating part of our bodies that like, it's kind of worth just going and like, see, if you have the access to it and the ability to do that, even if there's not something present, it's a very interesting thing to learn, or even just to learn about. But essentially the pelvic floor are the group of muscles that are kind of keeping everything inside. And so when you're taking a breath, your diaphragm is kind of, when you're breathing in, right, your diaphragm and your pelvic floor are going down. And then when you exhale, they're going up. And so it's always this like system that should be moving.
That's cool.
And I've had lots of conversations with my very good buddy, Genevieve, who is a pelvic floor therapist. And she's also one of my clients. But we've talked a lot about, a pelvic floor therapist will want that thing to always be moving. Always be moving, right? And then I'm like, hold it still.
Right.
So
brace yourself.
So then lift the most amount of weight.
Right?
And so it's like this spectrum. And so the goal is to find somewhere where you fall in that spectrum where it works for you and it is, works for your body, wherever you are in your journey. But I do think there's, sometimes there's like, I'm over here and they're over there. And it's like, how do we meet in the middle? And I think that's, I think the more we can learn about all those things. And then if we take that down a tangent, it's also this idea of like, one of the other like kind of components to understand is how your stress and your hormones and your sleep and all those things affect the way you're training. And also how you adapt. And we could also then say like, if you have a cycle, how that might affect it. Right. And so the considerations are how those things affect our training. So then it's like, well, what do we do? Right. Like, I'm not going to I don't believe that you should, preemptively program around your cycle because like we're weird. Like
Yeah.
our bodies are like complex. We're going
Yeah.
to show up differently. Sometimes I feel great over periods. Sometimes I feel
Mm-hmm.
like crap. And it's not a uniform thing across the board. And
Right.
so what I try to consider is just that you're going to show up as a different person almost every time you come to the gym.
Yes. And it may or
Um,
may not have to do with your cycle. It may have to do with
oh,
sleep or
yeah.
stress or, yeah, I often say, like endurance athletes, we like to talk about TSS, right? Like our training stress score and training peaks. It's like life
Hmm.
TSS is a
Hmm.
thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And so that, itself is kind of a form of autoregulation. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like autoregulation is the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the key that's going to allow us to train for a long period of time, but still maintain a structure
Mm-hmm.
because it's allowing you to regulate, auto-regulate how you're feeling on any given day and adjust how much weight you put on the bar, how much
Mm-hmm.
you do of one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what allows us to kind of continue to adapt without it being like overly stressful. But I think
Right.
when we don't consider that,
Mm-hmm.
then we risk uh somebody's just leaving, right? Because you're
Yeah.
just not caring about it. And
Right.
we don't train in these bubbles.
Right.
Um, and so, how I would train around your cycle, how I would train around like not sleeping, I forgot to eat lunch, whatever would
Mm-hmm.
be to
Mm-hmm.
use that form of autoregulation. And you can even use that like the pelvic floor stuff I was talking about, like those
Yeah.
that also applies. It really applies to anything.
Yeah.
But like the consideration would be that those things exist
Mm-hmm.
and they do affect how we show up.
Mm-hmm.
So we do need to talk about it.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Or because I mean, there's also, and this kind of segue into the next question too, is just like the culture of lifting, strength, CrossFit gyms, box gyms, right? It's like we don't talk about it. And it's so difficult, especially for, an athlete might have a certain number in their head because they're used to lifting a certain, and then they feel awful the next day. And how do they adapt? And they feel like they're shortchanging themselves if they don't, right? There's that whole thing. But it's like, I think the other thing that's interesting is how, women, I think, have specific insecurities about the nature of going into these box gyms. So I guess how have you, I think it'd be just like men's and women's barbells, right? What are
Mhm.
some of the things that you've kind of seen or noticed about gender differences in just like the culture of strength training, and how have you navigated them?
I think it's become pretty clear that like um when given the opportunity in the space, we're
Mm-hmm.
all gonna perform at the same level of
Mm-hmm.
intensity and seriousness and
Mm-hmm.
capacity even,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
So we I work in and own a more of a powerlifting gym, so it's a
Yeah.
black iron kind of gym. There's certainly people that do CrossFit in there, and we also
Sure.
have a large area for Olympic weightlifting,
Cool.
strongman, all the stuff. But in Olympic weightlifting, men use a 20-kilo barbell and women use a 15-kilo barbell.
Yeah.
And so often they are titled the men's and the
Mm-hmm.
women's bar because
Mm-hmm.
in the sport itself, that's what men use and that's what women use. And so in our gym, there was a kind of sign on the wall that said women's barbell.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I'm introducing someone to the gym, I always walk them around and show them all the different barbells. This is how you decide the one you're going to use.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, this bar is sometimes referred to as the women's barbell.
Mm-hmm.
It is called that because in
Mm-hmm.
this sport, women use it. And I was like, it's not because women should use it,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
can use any barbell you would like.
Yeah.
And then I always get up on my little soapbox and I go, do you know what year women were allowed to compete in the Olympics in Olympic weightlifting? I'm like,
What
what
year?
year? And then they're like, I don't know, like the
Mm.
80s. And I'm like, 2000.
Get out.
2000. Yes.
Wow. Yep.
And you
Mm-hmm.
think of weightlifting as like
Mm-hmm.
the official Olympic sport,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is like
Mm-hmm.
moving something heavy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like
Yeah.
women have not been invited to the table.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess based on your experience in training, like, are there aspects of strength training that should differ between, you could say like in general, men and women, folks assigned female at birth, like, are there certain or ages, like what are the things that you take into account?
I am not in charge of creating sports federations and like disseminating the rules from the top down.
Yeah.
I am here at the bottom just trying to get people to train.
Yeah.
And I think that often does require removing a lot of these barriers, these gender barriers.
Yep.
And even these kind of binary distinctions. The answer to all that, I don't know the answer to all that, but I do think that it's probably more harmful than helpful in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And, I think what I try to do is simply explain why these things exist in the way that they do and why you're going to find it that way in a space that you walk into. And they're like, these are the women's barbells. These are the men's. Why? Right. And so I think when we know the why, then we can start to challenge them in certain ways. And so that's ultimately where I come from. I just want people to understand that, again, women haven't had the opportunity, the access, the space to strength training at the same level and time and experience that men have. And we still don't. And it will take forever because they're always going to keep going up. And, So I think there's always kind of this understanding of that. And I think it just goes along those lines of like, don't take up space, like be smaller. And so I just try to fight against those kind of cultural norms and make them like, that's not what you'll find in this space. And if I can create it in a little teeny space, then maybe it'll expand in somewhere or another.
You and so many others, I think are doing such great work. And it's like, there's a gym here local in the Twin Cities that's really well known and really working hard to change kind of the culture around lifting. Folks in larger bodies, that just all of these different stereotypes about what it means to be an athlete, let alone someone who lifts heavy, right? It's really tough if you go into a gym and you feel like you don't belong. So I appreciate the perspective on like, it's not even necessarily the differences in training. It's about getting everyone to train. Like, let's start there so they have access to it and they can, right? What about, especially for folks who don't have equipment, right? So like they don't have a full, we'll say squat rack and all of this stuff, right? Let's say they're really busy, midlife women doing all of the things. They've got 2 to 3 hours a week for training. Like, what are the non-negotiables that you would suggest for strength training?
I think it's helpful to always kind of lead with what is the like general physical guidelines, which is 2 days of some sort of strength or resistance training and 75 to 150 minutes per week of
cardio
conditioning, cardio, endurance kind of thing. And that exists on a spectrum. Even that has like a little more parameters of like, if it's higher intensity, maybe it's more 75 minutes. If it's lower intensity, it's more 150. But the strength training is like 2 days of strength training. And that's it.
Cool.
So I think like just being like, okay, am I at least doing 2 days? Right. And what happens in those 2 days? Right. My suggestion would be if you're, wanting to do some sort of strength movement, routine is you can do dumbbells, you can do body weight, you can do barbells, you can do anything like Atlas stones and yokes or throw telephone poles or whatever you want. But I think what it comes down to is like neither one is like, I can't sit here and say like barbell strength training is the best for everything. Like it is the best and you must do it. What you do is the best thing to do.
The one you'll stick with, right? The one you can do consistently. That makes sense.
But what I would include in that would be some sort of squat pattern. So like kind of bending down, standing up. Some sort of hinge pattern where you're like working more at the back side of your body. That would look more like a deadlift, but it could also look like a hip thrust, right? Like it can look in a lot of different ways. And then maybe a push and a pull, right? Something to kind of work that upper body. I would include some sort of like conditioning movement, some sort of something for your cardiovascular health. It doesn't mean you need to like start running. It could come in lots of different ways. But I think the biggest like keys, like those movements are going to kind of generally work the whole body, right?
Yep.
The thing that's going to kind of keep that working would be more of like progressively loading it over time.
Yeah.
So yes,
that makes sense.
Body weight squats, push-ups, boom, get it, girl, like get going, right? At some point, you doing that twice a week for 2 years, like we gotta add load, right?
Yep.
So like you need to be able to progressively load it, which takes me back to my beloved barbell, which I love because I can start with a very light barbell and I can progressively load it forever.
Yes.
Like, and the movement doesn't really have to change. Because the idea is you just need enough stress and intensity to stimulate an adaptation.
That makes sense.
So, and that stress just increases over time, right? Because your body adapts more and more.
And gets stronger.
Yeah. And then like this piece, I think is actually very important, but it's not anything that anybody that is always in like the program, like just do this twice a week. I think that the thing that's going to make the biggest difference is some small element of connection, right? Like connection and accountability. I truly believe that is what makes this sustainable. Because we all know what to do.
Yes.
Like
totally.
Nobody needed me to just tell them that.
No.
Right?
Right.
So what is the thing that's going to get you to do the thing? And I really do believe that this like brief community interaction just totally supports consistency.
Like that's the non-negotiable is
maybe
the support
it is
needed to do the thing. Right.
Yeah.
I
don't know if it's the non-negotiable. Like maybe like the squat, but because we just want to like get up off the toilet, right?
Yes.
But like even then, like some people can't squat in the way that they think of squatting. So like just like some sort of like knee flexion and extension with like a hip flexion and extension. Maybe that's the non-negotiable. But I think the like little secret ingredient is the community aspect.
That's so important. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
One thing, I know you mentioned it earlier that I would love to hit on is like, what counts as heavy? There's a lot of talk about lift heavy shit. And a lot of women, myself included, are like, well, what does that mean? So how do you explain that to folks who are grappling with it? Especially if we have some of those mental barriers about like the intensity that you mentioned earlier.
Well, I always say that heavy is relative. Like heavy is a feeling. It's not a number. Right? For anyone ever in like your whole strength journey, it's never a number like externally to anybody else. Right? It's like relative to you. And that makes it so like frustrating and annoying. But like if you kind of wanted to boil down, it's like something that requires like some focus, some like deliberate pattern of movement in your breathing, in your body, some organization of your body doing the task, right? But still under control. Like that would kind of be heavy. Again, I like to use autoregulation, which my favorite is RPE, which is the rating of perceived exertion. So you could also use something like it's a 6 to an 8 out of 10, right? Like that's a scale we can all kind of like conceptualize. Okay, out of 10, it's like a 6 to an 8, right? It's not a 10.
Right.
10 out of 10 is like really heavy, not sustainable, right? We want sustainable heavy. It's something maybe in like if you were to give like a percentage, it could be anywhere from like 70 to 85% or something, right?
Sure.
Like I'm just kind of pulling those numbers out of nowhere, but because the percentage of what?
Right.
Like,
or
you just started
like,
lifting.
Like, is it 1 to 2 reps in reserve, like the RIR? So like you feel like you could maybe squeak out like 1 or 2 more, then that would count?
Yes, totally. And even then, right, I often kind of create a program where we are working to that range of an RP8, leaving 2 reps in the tank. It's heavy. It moves a little slow. Maybe you get a little nervous, but you know you can do it. You're not going to fail.
Right.
Even then, I spend a lot of time getting people to determine, okay, that's what that feels like.
Yeah.
Then I throttle them back a little bit and we kind of work right underneath that. And you can actually have a lot of success with that model. And it's more of like a low fatigue model.
Yep.
But oftentimes in the beginning, we need to know what that is before we can work right under that threshold.
Yes.
And so like this idea, like I need to lift heavy for the rest of my life. It's like, we need to understand what that is and what it feels like. So then we can kind of play in the spectrum of it for the rest of time.
Right.
If that makes sense.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And it's never like sharp pains or like worry, loss of control, like, you know, any sort of like really scary symptoms. It's like, you don't need to be like huffy pneumonia like every day. And it's funny because again, I feel like this idea of what heavy is better classified for people in a community setting, right? When you're in a space with other people doing the same thing as you, it kind of like normalizes effort and you're like, oh, that's heavy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it's like, but they're capable of doing it, you know? So like this idea of what is actually heavy changes like every time you go to the gym, and it changes even more if you're doing it around other people. And I think especially for women, that's helpful.
That's super consistent in the sports psychology research when like looking at levers to increase self-efficacy, which self-efficacy improves performance. And one of the ingredients or predictors for self-efficacy is seeing other people like you, who you relate to, do the thing. And so it's like that if they can do it, I can do it. Right.
Yeah.
So that community component is huge. One thing, you know, that this is coming because this is a trend. And on this podcast, we're all about discussing and debating fads, trends, whether or not they're great. What is your opinion on weighted vests? They're having a moment right now.
They are.
Yeah. How do you feel about them? What do you think? Assuming someone already has a barbell.
I think if you already have a barbell, then you probably don't need a weighted vest for those movements, right?
Fair.
You can load them in other ways. I mean, I think that we're always seeking out the simplest way to do things, right?
Yeah.
Even like within our body, our body will seek out the easiest route to do the squat.
Absolutely.
Right? It's going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it this way. And you know what? That way probably includes your low back, which is why your low back's so tired. It's like, because I'm always doing everything. But like, even like as our body and as human beings, we're going to seek out like what's the easiest way for me to do something. And I think those things are like exciting, and they have a way of like permeating into the world. I think that weighted vests are probably not giving you as much bang for your buck as they're being touted as. There's certainly like a lot of hype, and I think that's because it is so easily accessible.
Yeah.
I do think that, you know, it kind of like does what we're talking about, like it adds some load to the kind of daily activities. But I think the ability of the vest to like actually change your bone density and create new muscle mass, I don't think the data is there to support it.
Yeah.
I do think that it can really help you with like balance, right?
Sure.
Like if you were going on a daily walk and you added a vest, like you might be less likely to like fall down, which is great because we don't want to fall down, especially as we get older.
Right.
So I think there's like, probably some small benefits in like your energy expenditure, your balance. but I don't think that like the stress on your bone and the whole system is enough to make it
Yeah.
your whole thing, your whole
Yeah.
vibe,
That
right?
makes sense. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But I'm also not here to like poop on anybody's, like I have done nothing. I have been sitting on the couch and at my desk
Yeah.
and now I put my vest on and I go on a walk every night.
Right.
Like, hell
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
So like I'm not gonna sit here and be like, shame on you for falling for the
That's
Instagrammers,
not the right
influencers.
way.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there are a lot of ways to get more bang for your buck for the
Yep.
time that you're investing.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately that is what always carries me back to the barbell. And I like the barbell because that's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy teaching it. I enjoy like watching people use it. But I still am not going to sit here and say like you must do that and it's the best thing, right?
Right.
There are lots of ways to gain muscle mass. There's lots of ways to build your lean, body mass. And it doesn't have to incorporate a barbell. So if somebody wants to come to me and says, I just am not getting stronger with this weighted vest, I'll be like, yeah. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, do you want to try something different? Right.
Exactly.
Like that's another, Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like until then. So I think, they're simple, they're portable.
Yeah.
You can buy one real easily, slap it on, go on your walk. But I'm not sure that they're like creating the adaptation that people say they are.
That's fair. That makes sense. I've got one final question for you before we wrap up, and then we'll get your contact info so folks can get a hold of you if interested. So think of it as, strength training. If it was suddenly like prescribed by doctors, if it was seen as a non-negotiable, if it was accessible for everyone who wanted to enter these spaces and have access to these facilities or the equipment, like what would have to change in our culture? This is a loaded question, to actually serve like all communities and you know what I mean? All people, where it's not just people who have access to gyms, for example.
I think that there needs to be lots of ways to kind of meet people where they are. We live in this kind of like black and white polarized kind of culture, right? Where, like we kind of want, I think a lot of people internally want someone to just tell them what to do. Yeah. Right. They just want someone to tell them. They just don't like, there's a lot of chatter in my brain. And so we seek out initially spaces that are those like bubbles. Yep. Where your feelings don't matter. No excuses. Like just do the hard thing. Yeah. Like
put your head down and do the work.
Yeah. I don't care how your day went. Like, I don't care who just got elected. I don't care about your hormones. Right. I think we want that in some way because it seems really simple. Like if I just did this hard thing, but the problem is it's not like ultimately sustainable and it doesn't give us a sense of autonomy or like agency in the thing that we're doing. Like, why are we doing this? Like, what if I didn't want to do this? Or, how do I do this and not keep paying you?
Right. Right.
Like, what if I want to go over here?
Yes.
How do I find on the internet?
Yeah.
What is ChatGPT telling me the right thing to do?
Right. Right.
So I think what sucks is we can't live in these bubbles. We really need to be in spaces where we like welcome real conversation and we like acknowledge that there are external things affecting the way that we train and the way that we show up. Yep. And it's harder, right? Like even I would like, I want to be in a space where everybody thinks like me and looks like me and we all just get along and believe the same things.
Right.
But like that's not actually like challenging me and like creating this longer term benefit. Yep. So
that makes sense.
my idea of like how we evolve these spaces is we create spaces where lots of different people exist in the same space, but they don't all have to conform to one way of doing things.
There's not one right way to do it.
Yeah. And like that could look like, I will often tell my clients, like if they're like, I'm moving or someone online is like, how should I know what gym to look for? Right. Something I might say is like, look for a gym that has lots of different barbells.
Yeah.
Do they have a women's barbell? Great. Right. That's a smaller barbell that you can use for overhead presses because you might not be able to press the 20 kilo, 45 pound bar.
Right.
And so by having more barbells, more tools, right? Maybe they have boxes, they have safety bars, they have a leg press, they have a leg extension. They do just squats. They do, they just have you get down on the floor and get back up again. Like finding a space that allows for all those different things, that's going to be a space that is interested in you coming there. Yeah. Right. A space that has one barbell and one type of rack, and that's it. Like that might not be the space that's like saying, hey, we want to work with you. Yeah, we want you who's never done anything. Get in here. Right. And so I think creating spaces that have lots of different tools, and that's all access and money and lots of stuff, right?
Totally.
So I think ultimately it comes down to like this emphasis in like community strength, kind of everybody's lifting each other up and this sense of belonging in lots of different spaces. And I think that's a big, old, broader question to regard the world at large.
Totally.
Where we're really trying to like pull into like, I'm here and you're there. Yeah. Right. How can we have similar goals and exist in the same space, but not have to think and be just like each other?
Right. Yeah.
And without just ignoring it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
recognizing the system was designed for a certain type of person. The sport was designed for a certain community, right? And so it's like sometimes questioning those norms and assumptions and standards and being willing to revisit them and adjust, right? Yeah. So, very helpful.
So, I think, creating spaces where people can begin wherever they are, and be around lots of different people. And I do think that most, I think of even our gym is this black iron hardcore place. And once you get in there, everybody's super nice. Like nobody's super intimidating. It's just these cultural things that kind of keep us from entering in the first place. Yeah. So you need like a shepherd.
Yes.
That's what I try to be, that shepherd. Like, come on in. Let me show you around.
Join us. Yeah. That's really cool.
So I guess that's, ultimately I think what's going to make the difference alongside like data research. I think there's already like a lot of conversation around strength training. Everybody seems to think they know everybody seems to understand that they should be doing it.
Sure.
Right. Everybody is now at the point where they're like, oh yeah.
They recognize that it's a thing. Yeah.
I should be strength training.
Yeah.
But I don't know how. Yeah. And I don't know where.
Yeah.
And I don't know when. And I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that we have to answer.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. This was amazing, Cassi. We'll have to do another because I also have. I've got more questions for you. So we'll do a round two one of these days for sure. In the meantime, where can folks find you, and what's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can go to my website, which is cassiniemann.com, or Instagram at cassie.niemann. And then if you're ever in Albuquerque, I am a co-owner of Iron Soul Gym, which was a big thing that happened this year. So,
amazing. Congrats.
Thank you. It's kind of this, I talked a lot about community and kind of like building spaces where people can do the thing.
Right.
So, and then obviously with Feisty.
Obviously. Yeah. Yep. And I'll share more about I know you do the barbell strength training with them. And so we'll share some more about that so folks can access that and learn more if they would like to. So
awesome.
In the meantime, thank you for your time. Really appreciate having you on and joining us.
Thank you so much.
What a cool conversation with Cassi today about reframing our relationship with strength training. As we wrap up, I'm struck by a number of key things here. First, strength is not about perfection or finding that perfect form and worrying that if we don't find that perfect form, we're going to get injured. That perspective may actually be hurting us in the long run. Our bodies will adapt and move in ways that work for us. Second, heavy is always relative to where you are in your journey, and heavy one day may be different than heavy another day, and that's okay. It's really important to hold those numbers lightly. And third, community and connection may be the secret sauce that makes strength training sustainable in the long term. I'd love for all of you to reflect on one question. What beliefs about strength training might be holding you back from experiencing its benefits? If Cassi's approach resonated with you, you can find her on Instagram or check out Iron Soul Gym if you're ever in the Albuquerque area. And if you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to leave a review. It takes 30 seconds and helps other women find these evidence-based conversations to more easily cut through the noise on the internet to find the good stuff. Join me next week with a really fun interview with one of my colleagues, sports psychologist, where we question and address old school rhetoric in sport that encourages pain, exhaustion, emotional suppression as badges of honor. Spoiler alert, they are not badges of honor. You will want to tune in for this one because it's a good one. Until then, remember that strength truly is for everybody, including you, and you get to define what that looks like and feels like. Thanks, Feisties. Thanks for tuning in to the Feisty Women's Performance Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, review, and share. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not establish a therapeutic relationship. In other words, I'm a licensed psychologist, but not your licensed psychologist. Always consult your healthcare provider before making important decisions about your health. Find show notes and resources at feisty.co. Join us next time as we continue to move the needle in women's health and performance via evidence-based conversations. Until then, keep living your healthiest, feistiest, active life.